committee is called back to order, and I invite the Deputy Sergeant at Arms to bring the witness in. This is so.
I swear by Almighty God that with the evidence I shall give to this honorable legislative assembly shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I do solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give this honorable legislative assembly shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Good evening, Mr. Brown, and thank you for coming. And you will have been informed that we were doing a review of the Office of the Auditor General's report on the efficiency and effectiveness of the Utility Regulation and Competition Office, commonly known as OFREG, in a report done in 2020. Last week we heard from the regulators, and this week we're endeavoring to hear from the people who are being regulated. So the purpose of this is to try and find out how you see the regulators. How is it supporting your business? Is it affecting your business? What would be some of the things that you think they could do better, et cetera, et cetera. And I'll invite Mr. Chris to lead off the question. First question you answer, we ask you to say your full name and what you represent, and that's just for the Hansard purposes. Okay.
Afternoon, Mr. Johnny, and thanks very much for coming. Just to expand on the chairman's opening remarks, one of the things that, and specifically why we invited you, is even though you're not directly regulated by OFREG, you're also impacted by their decisions. And one of the things that we wanted to get from this PSC session is for it to be more informational and educational as opposed to confrontational or adversarial. And we wanted your lens in terms of having now been on the final end of the supply chain in terms of directly dealing with the customers and everything else. What else can be done in terms of to improve? Because one of the things that came out of even earlier today with even the Rubis witness was that based on price that he gave us, and we realized that the normal times price landed at Cayman was about $2.40, $2.45 thereabouts. By the time you factor in transportation costs, port fees, and also the government duty of 75 cents, and even doing a conversion from US gallons to imperial gallons. And one of the things that we're trying to understand that within normal times, if it's 240, 245 landed with all of those stuff, what it is that drives up it to even the $5 that we have in some situations. Now, we recognize that the gas stations themselves makes a certain margins between what you get from the wholesaler and from yourself as retailers. But what we're trying to understand is what along the line that we can do or what needs to be done to free up more of those savings to pass on to the consumer. Or if it is a case where the operational cost, the fixed cost is indeed something too high, then if that is the case, do we then need to start looking at the number of suppliers we have? One of the questions that we did ask specifically was if there are even too many gas stations in the market with the population that we have. Because one of the things that, I mean, from my own research, looking across the Caribbean and looking at some of the populations that they have and looking at the number of service stations, I am still of the opinion that it is too much, but we were corrected and told that's not the case. But nonetheless, we just wanted your independent view, because you are not regulated by OFREG, but naturally you are affected by the market. You're a major player in the market. And what we're looking to do is gain from you your knowledge, your experience in this regard to see what it is that we can probably do to make this market more better. You have been in this business a long time, probably one of the longest operators that we have. It's a Cayman-owned business, successful, and we're proud of what it is that you have done individually as a businessman also. So at a minimum, we would just like to have that frank conversation from your years of experience in the industry to see what can be done to get some relief at the pump. So that is really the purpose of this. It's not to get into your commercial business or your secrets or anything, but just the industry as a whole and what it is that we can do. So my first question, I would start off after just explaining the preamble and giving you the framework, is in terms of the number of gas stations, do you think that we have just the right amount, or do you think we have too many gas stations?
Johnny Brown from Brown's SO. Yeah, I am of the opinion that for such a small population in Cayman, that we have too many gas stations. The volumes are split too much, and that's what drives part of the cost. If I had, let's say, 2 of them on the runs that I operate, if I had them on a half-decent street corner in the city of Miami, Florida, I would sell with those 2 stations probably in 1 month what the 24 stations in Cayman sells. So my operating costs would be a lot less, so therefore I would need, my margin would be a lot less. So that would help to bring the cost of fuel down.
So with that said, I mean, one of the things, do you think from a gas station standpoint, because if, I mean, one of the things that Saul, I know, well, Saul had mentioned, which had kind of caught me a little bit by surprise when he said that his net profit, or the net profit for Saul, is roughly around 5% of their income, which was actually kind of took me a little bit surprised. Of course, I don't know what the income is, but nonetheless, from an efficiency standpoint, even the return on their, I think, investment or capital was also around the 5% mark, which again is also quite low, which really then had me thinking in terms of the volume, because it still comes back to a volume-based business. And if the general rule is if a market isn't big enough to have multiple players, you may have one player, but then you put in regulation to make sure that they don't basically take full control of the market. And what has really surprised me, just doing my analysis, is when I look at the amount of the volume of fuel imported into the country, which is around 51 million gallons across diesel, gas, and avgas, and I take around 36 million of that. I think CUC runs around 3 million per month. So you're talking about 15 million, and then by the time you take out the aviation fuel, and then by the time you take out boats, and then you take the number of cars and divide the balance, you're really realistically looking at basically making money from selling chips as opposed to making money from selling gas. And exactly. That is really what I'm trying to understand here, because if it's a situation now where every gas station has these costs that it has to cover, and the margin or the volume is so low, because the only way you can make up difference is really on either volume or on price. And in this case, where volume isn't possible because of the number of to be shared up amongst, then it means price is ultimately the one that's going to pay for it. You know, and so that's what we're trying to understand. So I say that to ask this question then, what do you think, I mean, ideally would be the optimum mix? Because, I mean, I look at your stretch in along the road, and, I mean, just a stretch of gas station literally within miles of each other. I mean, all serving people going on one road in one direction or back and forth. What do you see as being like the optimum mix, or even the space, the optimum space in between gas station? A mile, 2 miles? What would it be?
Well, I don't know what the optimum spacing would be, but the problem is we already have these stations, so it's not much we can do about that, except I know I was in Barbados probably about 5 years ago, and I was informed that they haven't built I was in Barbados about 5 years ago, and they haven't built a new gas station in over 30 years. They had a moratorium. You can remodel your station, but there's no new gas station being built in Barbados. You build a new road, tough. You get fuel there and you get back on the next road.
One of the things that came out of the testimony, which had really had me thinking, was basically was saying that the dealers are competing. But my understanding is, and going back again to using the example of the $2.45 landed cost, which doubles to $5 in normal times, of that $2.55 that's remaining, it is my understanding the dealer margin on each is roughly anywhere around 30 cents on each gallon thereabouts. And again, I don't need for you to get into into your commercial business, but then I beg the question, then if the dealers are making even 30, 40, 50 cents of that $2.50 margin or $2.55 margin, what else is really then driving the other side of the $2, which is basically going to the wholesaler? I mean, what cost is it that is being covered at the wholesaling level to justify that? Because 100% markup, I can't find it anywhere else within the Caribbean. So I'm trying to understand and then the next thing that came out of that was, I noticed in some Caribbean islands, the retailers actually form an association where they literally demand a certain margin from the wholesaler to make their business at least competitive. Is there something being looked at in Cayman, or is there something that you think would be better off? But either way, that margin needs to be shared differently, or more importantly, reduced significantly in order for the consumer to get something out of it.
Well, I'm not privy to the information on whether they're doubling it from $2.45. We just get a wholesale price. We get an email. It used to be maybe 24 hours notice. These days we get it maybe 48 hours notice. There's going to be a price change up or down on this particular date at 5 p.m. or 4 p.m. and that's it. And this is your new price. So that's the way it works.
Evidence that the wholesalers gave us, they say that the retailers are the ones that set the price at the pump.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
But we don't have anything to do with the wholesale price, how that's made up or how much the wholesaler makes. We just get the new price, and the 8 or 9 octane is going to be $3 a gallon, effective the 23rd at 4 p.m.
And that would be the price that you would buy at.
Yeah.
So in essence, that becomes your floor. So if they tell you it's $3, then you will have to basically operate within that $3 type. Well, anything above that becomes pretty much your margin.
Margin, yeah. That's where you'll see, if the price changes 15 cents, you'll see the price change 15 cents at a pump, up or down. What we endeavor to do, our best to do is consume the fuel that we have in our tank. Like, I'll have my guys note, okay, we got fuel this morning. We had 3,000 gallons of regular that we paid $2.94, but we just got fuel, but I paid $3.05 for it. So when we sell that 3,000 gallons, as close as possible, you know. Sometimes we go over, sometimes we miss it a little bit, you don't get it exact. Then we move the price up or down, whichever way it's supposed to go. Sometimes if I have a hunch, because I pay pretty good attention to the fuel market prices, if I can see that it looks like the price is going to go up, I will try starting to load my tanks up to get ahead of the game, and that way it's a longer time before we actually pass the cost on, so we can keep our price down. And on another note about the amount of stations, as you all know, I operate more than one station, and what I've been doing and what I've learned is that by sharing the management overhead costs, I've actually been able to lower my costs. And, you know, it's one particular station I'm operating right now, I'm 15 cents below most of the other stations, because I don't have the higher operating costs. I don't have the owner to support, the manager to support. I try to split management, like maybe 2 stations managed by 1 person, just a supervisor and move in between, so I can keep my costs down, which is my goal, which is the same problem we have in Cayman, is the buying power. I'm also trying to accomplish that through my wholesalers here for the inside of the store, to buy more in volume to get a better price, so I can offer a better price to the public. And the main thing driving the cost of fuel in Cayman is we're nobody. We don't buy any fuel. What we buy in a year, some places buy in 1 day or a month. You know, I was purchasing fuel at one time. I was importing fuel for one of my mobile companies, and the wholesaler was purchasing from out of Florida. He was selling I think it was 500,000 gallons a day. So his margin is 7 cents a gallon.
And you have gas stations from both
Both sides,
wholesaler.
Rubis and Esso.
Yeah. Do you find any difference in do they offer you? Is there any advantage of one over the other, or?
That's a loaded question. You know, they got some plus on one and negative on the next one, and you know, and the prices are different, which they work out whatever their wholesale price is.
Do they offer you as a retailer any breaks on volume?
No.
And it is still a situation where you normally have to pay them before you deliver it, and
For one
but you're
company-
expected to give it up for 30 days credit?
One company, we have, when the truck leaves, it carries the check. The other company, they give us, if you maintain the good credit, they give you 7 days. 7 days.
As a retailer, to offer it to customers or people on a 30-day credit?
Yeah, we offer 30-day credit, and then, speaking of credit, then you got the credit cards. You know, if the gas is $4 a gallon, basically the bank is hitting you around 3%. So you talk about the 12 cents going right off of it straight to the bank. So it all starts to add up, you know. And we are regulated by OFREG. I deal with OFREG on a regular basis. Fuel inspector, pricing, other inspections, licensing, we have to pay them. I think I have about 5 licenses at one gas station. And then I also heard a threat that we were going to get another one. They need a restaurant license. So
Hold a second. You pay off-reg a license?
of course, long time. I have to get a license every year from OFREG to operate. I have a retail license. I have an OFREG license. I have a tobacco license to sell cigarettes. I have a liquor license. And I think there's something else. But it just keeps changing. It's just you keep adding and adding and adding. We're going through the process right now to renew our liquor license, and every year they seem to add more. This year now we even have to have our deep well inspected and certified. That costs money. I don't know what deep wells, exhaust hoods have to do with selling liquor, but all these things we have to do. Your hood got to be clean. So it just keeps adding and adding and adding to the cost.
Yeah, your liquor license doesn't allow you to sell for consumption on site, right?
No consumption.
Well, I mean, it's really ridiculous then to be inspecting your bathroom. But
They
anyway,
inspect everything. The DEH inspects the whole place. We have to get the hood certified has been cleaned, certified that the extinguishing system is serviced, the emergency exits, all the fire extinguishers, Now they've added the deep well, and I think it was something else they've added. So I actually was saying to my wife, at the end of this, I want to sit down and add up the cost and see, does it really make sense? Are we really making any money? Are we just paying fees? So,
If there's one thing that you would like to see change within the industry, or maybe two things, what would that really be? More important than anything else, like this, the one thing that would ultimately you think would make a difference to consumers?
as we all know, us Caymanians here, everything that happens in Cayman is compared to Miami. Well, I can get that in Miami for $2. So people look on the TV and they see gas in Miami, $2.69. Cayman, it's $4. Why? The two huge differences is the fuel you see are actually three. It is self-serve. If you find full service in Miami, it's about 50 cents a gallon more, if you find it. It's gotten so bad in the United States with the self-serve that some of the states and other states are following, making it a law that you must offer full service because disabled people can't get serviced. And even when you see that it's, and I'm sure most of you guys have seen that Shell station next to Miami International. I think it's 25th Street and Lejeune Road. There's about $1.50 a gallon more than everybody else. And then there's another 50 cents a gallon more for full service. Well, that full service, the only person really offering that full service is, say, a supervisor working inside, because nobody really using it. So they may have 20 customers for the day that comes in full service. So there's no added cost. He comes up, pumps it, the company makes 50 cents more. Whereas here, at least half of the people use the full service. I actually introduced self-service to Cayman, I think, in 1988. I was told by the actual country manager at the time at SO that it took me months to convince him to get me a sign. He says, I'm going to keep these signs because we're going to have to put them back up. So, and it stayed. So probably half our business is self-serve. But we're not allowed to advertise the self-serve price. We get asked all the time, hey, it says $4 a hair, but the pump says $3.95. So yeah, I got self-serve, and we're not allowed to advertise the self-serve price.
Second, you're not allowed to advertise.
That's a fuel regulation.
By who? Off-reg or the wholesaler?
No, government.
By government?
Yeah. From time they changed the law that we had to put the pricing up on the major ID signs. We're not allowed. The only way you can advertise self-service, that's all you have. Like my East End station is self-serve only. That's the only price we have. We can advertise that. But if you have full service, you have to put the full service price up. So that makes it appear another 5 cents higher. Then the other problem is the fuel you see advertised in Miami is the 87 octane, the lowest grade gasoline fuel. Rubis, Esso, they do not sell that fuel. So you're talking 30, 40 cents a gallon difference. We sell basically 89 and 93. So that makes it higher. If you want to compare the cost of fuel at a Rubis or a Esso station, you have to look for the premium gas in the U.S. The 89 octane, 89.90. That's the fuel you can compare it to. Then the price that they're advertising, that you see on the news in Miami, is a U.S. gallon. And I think 90% of the people in Cayman don't even know that there's two different gallons. So you're getting a good 20% more with an imperial gallon. And so somebody has to pay for that. So one thing, I've said it to the suppliers, I've said it to different people in government. In fact, I've said it to the Premier, a recommendation to him. Change the measure of fuel to U.S. gallons. That way, when you start comparing more an apple to an apple, because you got to see the same size, the same volume of fuel.
Just out of curiosity, and this is just from my own understanding, because what is the primary difference? Because, I mean, we bring in a lot of cars from the U.S., and if they're using 87 up there, I mean, versus, and like I said, this is not something I'm an expert on, but just from my own curiosity, what's the difference between 87 octane versus, say, a 90 octane? And the reason I asked that, because on an early witness, we look at St. Kitts, where I think they were about $3 US a gallon, $3.05 US a gallon in St. Kitts 2 days ago, versus Cayman, just comparing like with US, was $5.14 average in terms of Cayman using global fuel prices. So that $2.14.
$3 something now.
Yeah, well, I think that, they had.
It's been there for a couple of months now.
Yeah, well, that'll be about
between
four.
$3.8 and $3.99, that area.
Yeah. No, we're talking
US
yeah, the
dollars.
U.S. So let's compare
Yeah,
U.S.
okay.
Yeah, sorry. And the difference you had noticed that basically was the octane. No, I'm just curious from that
You said that was
stand.
St. Kitts?
I think we're using St. Kitts. You say they use a lower octane.
Yeah, one huge advantage the Eastern Caribbean has over Cayman is they have a huge petroleum storage facility. It's one of those islands just to the north of St. Kitts, I think it is. Somewhere, not Antigua they had a refinery and everything, but there's another island that I've been by on a cruise ship. I just can't remember the name of it now. And there's super tankers just laying away there, waiting to offload and move fuel. There's huge storage tanks on the sides of the mountains and stuff. So they have a huge transshipment business there, so a lot of fuel is there. So if they're buying out of there, then their shipping costs is a lot less. So I think that gives them a big advantage over Cayman.
Well, I'm happy to hear you say that, because we were actually told that they had a lower octane, and we were like,
That's possible too. Because remember I was saying the 87, the 89, and the 93.
but from a car standpoint, now this,
I think in the U.S. that is protected by the size of the nozzle, right? If the manufacturer recommends that your engine, you put high octane, the lower octane nozzle won't go into your tank.
I think it's only diesel and gas that has two different sizes nozzles.
Oh, okay. All right. Because it used to be that way
Diesel
before.
is bigger.
Yeah.
To start trying to cut down on people putting diesel in the gas tank.
Yeah.
But the 87, I think most cars can run off of 87. Some cars perform better with 89 or the 93. Some cars, some of the BMWs, the Benzes and stuff, the more horsepower engines require 93 and stuff like that.
And I think it has to do more with the emission control and the catalytic converter. The 87 will clog it up in a hurry.
Yeah.
Because of the emission control in the States.
But I think part of the reason Cayman has the 89 and the 93 is the same thing come back again to size. We are so small, we don't even have a dedicated tanker come to Cayman because we can't hold what the tanker can bring. So like a tanker will leave Louisiana, go to Bermuda, drop off fuel, Bahamas, Cayman, drop off fuel. And I think part of the issues like Bermuda, by law, their minimum octane is 93. Yeah.
Is it, we try to solicit from the wholesalers in their delivery, is why does the milk run, if it's coming from the south coast of the United States, the Gulf Coast, Cayman is the closest point. Why aren't they coming to Cayman first at all times, right? And they say that...
I'm sure it probably don't make no difference on the cost. They probably split the cost of the tanker.
Well, he kind of hinted that way, but then he said that it doesn't affect the cost. So I'm not sure, because in the shipping business, I'm pretty sure that charters is related to distance and size. So
yeah, that I'm not sure of.
But the thing about it is, I mean, just going back to the U.S. versus Cayman standpoint, and even looking across the Caribbean, is that we have even seen in some of the smaller islands too, that they have far more competitive prices. And using again the Rubis example, and going back to normal times, and this is pre-COVID, where $2.45 landed becomes $5 at the pump. Now, at the end of the day, that's more than 100% markup in terms of between landed costs coming using Platts Gulf Coast price. And you literally, the price is more than double. And we're trying to understand what is it that really drives the price being double, where we don't see that. I mean, barring countries like, say, Barbados, where the duty is quite high. I mean, 75 cents duty isn't that far out compared to some of the other islands in terms of what those governments charge down there. And we're still trying to figure out what is it. So if the dealer, and going back to my days when I used to do bookkeeping for some gas stations, I think one gas station, I think their margin was like 27 cents on average that they were making on a gallon of gas. No, I don't know if that has changed between back then versus now. But the question is, if there's a $2 and $50, $2.60, or $2.70 margin going on a gallon of gas, and roughly around 30 cents, 40 cents, or 50 cents is going to the dealer, it means at the end of the day, your ability to play is only within that 30 to 50 cents price range. The real chunk of the issue, the other $2 plus, is still at the wholesaler point. And then the question is then, how do we deal with that? Because the most you can affect the market price is your margin. And your margin isn't that great compared to the overall. Then the question is, what do we need to do then to deal with the larger part, which is the wholesaler? And we have also found out from previous testimony from Mr. Monroe from Offreg, the fuel, the very invoice of the fuel that comes inside here comes from subsidiaries of the very same companies that are bringing it in. So they're buying from a subsidiary company, they're selling to themselves, and in some cases they're also selling to gas stations again that they own. So when you look along the supply chain, the very same wholesalers are also, in essence, quote-unquote quasi-retailers to some extent. And the margins are pretty much stepped up along the way. So I think from that standpoint, it is a situation where, yes, we don't expect the prices to be the same as Miami, and I do expect at least maybe a dollar difference or something or whatever, especially when you have the ships them stop in different places going. The ship that stop here goes to Puerto Rico and go elsewhere, we have also found out. Then the question is, if the ship is going from port to port, the cost really shouldn't be that different between port to port when it's the same ship. But nonetheless, by the time it reaches to the pump, it becomes a difference. And Bahamas, for example, sets a margin between what the retail in terms of gas and also for diesel. And if you look at Bahamas population in terms of their consumption, you look at Cayman consumption, and you look at the margins, to some extent, you find that Cayman is still even more, far more expensive. Another reason that was given was Cayman high cost of living. Yet in the last 2 years, between 2016 and 2018, fuel went up by 13% in the over 2-year period, but the cost of living index did not go up over 13% in the 2-year period. So there seems to be definitely a disconnect. And that is stuff that we can deal with from the regulator standpoint, and we'll have that because the big chunk is at the wholesaler level, is not really at your level as a retailer. But the grand scheme of it is ultimately, what can we do along the way? Because ultimately you have a business, you employ Caymanians, you employ people, we need for your business to survive also. But at the same time, everybody basically needs to survive, and also the consumers also need to survive. But at $2.50, $2.60, $2.70 margin, which is almost twice the price, even if you compare it to Miami, you know what I mean, it is still a bit too high. And like I said, yes, we are nobody in the grand scheme, but the ship still stop here, it goes someplace else, and it just dropping fuel off along the way. And it can be a situation, look at Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is like less under $3 US right now for even a gallon of gas in Puerto Rico, like $2 and something at the pump. So when we start factoring in those things, you mentioned the Miami prices. Built into the Miami price is 18.5 cents for federal tax, which isn't here, but that would cover the cost of even our shipment, which is around 15 cents a gallon. So that in itself washes. But what we didn't, the only explanation we have been given is that Cayman is a high-cost jurisdiction, and that was just pretty much it. And if that is the case, then where there is a high-cost thing there, and businesses clearly aren't making enough money according to them, then there's a situation now where if the demand is set at a certain place, then we need to start looking at the supply. But it can't be a situation where prices are going up because we have too many gas stations, we've got too many players, and the consumers are suffering. At some point, then a hard decision will need to be made to bring the prices down, because it generates one of the biggest, it drives the cost. And I used in my previous life in banking that basically we needed to write $10 million in loan just to pay our light bill. And we were in a 2-story building. And I would hate to see what the bigger banks are actually doing, and that's $10 million in loans. You're talking about another $40 million in loan just to pay the SEMA fees. So you have gone $50 million right there just on light bill and just on SEMA fees. And then when you have 6 commercial banks, that's $300 million. But when you look at the total loan increase each year, it's around $200 million. So as a result, you find out banks charge all of these crazy fees because you can't write enough loans, which is primarily your source of making money, to cover your costs. For every employee you had is another $1 million worth of loans you had to write for each employee that you had. And then you look at the overall market, it's not growing that much. Then you end up with crazy fees being charged for every single thing that you go to the bank for because you can't make the money on your loan book. People, shareholders expect you to do a 7 to 10% return on capital. But if the loan percentage is under 3, 4, 5%, where else you think you're going to make money is going to be again bring your fees? Because at some point, as you said with your wife, you have to make yourself the decision. If you're going to spend this much money and this is what you get, something you're better off putting the money in a mutual fund, put in a bank account and call it a day and go on the beach. Yeah. I mean, that is also a possibility too. Yeah. You know what I mean? So we need to find a balance between businesses surviving in Cayman, which is reasonable, but at the same time, consumer also surviving too. And I think that is the hard conversation that we need to have with regards to the supply, because it appears that the supply is really an issue. And if you have just laid out, for you to have survived in this business, you had to basically add multiple gas stations to spread your costs across in order for you to survive. For the other gas stations that doesn't have that, well, God go with them.
Mr. Brown, thank you very much for coming. It has been very enlightening. And thanks for coming, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. The meeting is adjourned until 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, Mr. Austin. 9 a.m. That's 1 hour before 10. Thank you very much. See you all in the morning.